The internet will tell you that you can reset your brain by sitting in an empty room and doing absolutely nothing. No phone, no music, no snacks you like, no talking, just you and a blank white wall for a whole day. The idea is that your dopamine slowly drains down to zero and then refills clean, like emptying a fuel tank. There is one small problem with that plan. You cannot fast from a chemical your own brain makes on its own every single second, whether you want it to or not. Picture a guy sitting cross-legged on the floor of a bare white room, eyes shut, trying hard to feel nothing. Floating above his head is a fuel gauge with the word dopamine on it, and he is waiting for the needle to drop. He waits, and the needle does not move. It does not move because the tank he is imagining does not exist. So before you try this, it really helps to know what dopamine actually is. Let's clear up the biggest mistake first. Dopamine is not a pleasure juice that pulls up in your skull and runs low when you have too much fun. It is a signal. It is a tiny chemical message your brain uses to predict rewards and push you to go and get them. It is the thing that makes you want stuff, chase stuff, and actually get off the couch. It is doing useful work all the time, helping you move, focus, and learn what is worth your effort. Your brain is firing it off right now, just to keep you moving, breathing, and paying attention to this. So a gauge slowly draining to empty is the wrong picture from the very start. You are not running a tank down to zero. You are messing with the thermostat, and that is a very different machine. Now, the idea did start somewhere reasonable before the internet got hold of it. A psychologist named Cameron Seppa came up with something he called dopamine fasting. His version was a simple therapy tool, not a magic brain cleanse. The idea was to take short, planned breaks from a handful of compulsive habits. Things like endless scrolling, gambling, junk food, and other stuff people do on autopilot. The goal was never to lower a chemical. It was to loosen the grip of habits that the chemical helps lock in. He even said straight out that the name was just a catchy title and was not meant to be taken literally. Then, the idea spread online, and the title is exactly what people latched onto. They decided it meant starving the brain of every last drop of pleasure. So they stopped talking to friends, skipped meals, turned off the lights, and sat there in the dark. Some of them even avoided eye contact, as if a single glance might leak a little dopamine. Picture our guy flinching away from a friendly wave, like the wave itself might ruin his cleanse. That version was never the plan, and it does not do what they think it does. There is also a popular myth hiding underneath all of this. People imagine that if they starve themselves of fun for a day, the next hit will feel twice as strong, as if the dopamine piles up in storage, waiting to be spent all at once. That is not how any of it works, and chasing that feeling just digs the hole deeper. If anything, white-knuckling through one miserable day can make the next binge feel even more tempting. So if you can't actually drain dopamine, why does everything feel so flat and boring lately? Here is the part that is genuinely true, and genuinely useful. Your brain does not really care how much pleasure you get. It cares about one thing. Did you get more or less than it expected? When something turns out better than expected, dopamine spikes and you feel a real rush. When something is exactly as good as expected, there is barely a blip. And when something is worse than expected, the signal dips and you feel quietly let down. So your brain is basically running a constant guessing game about what comes next. Think about the very first time something thrilled you and how the 10th time barely registered. The reward stayed exactly the same, but your brain stopped being surprised by it. Now think about what you feed that guessing game on a normal day. Imagine a tiny spoiled stickman living inside your head, sitting in a little director's chair. This is your reward system, and it is in charge of handing out the good feelings. Every few seconds, your phone hands him a fresh video, a new like, another bright little explosion. At first, he claps and grins at everyone, but pretty soon a small explosion isn't enough, so he frowns and demands a bigger one. The feed always has a bigger one loaded and ready, so he keeps raising the bar all day long. Picture him pointing at the screen, mouth open, shouting for more, while the explosions get louder and brighter. Short videos are the perfect machine for this, because a boring one is only ever a thumb flick away. You never have to sit through a dull moment, so your brain never has to settle down. And it isn't only phones, to be fair. Any source of fast, easy, super strong stimulation can train your brain in the very same way, and your brain quietly adjusts to all of this noise. It starts to expect constant fireworks as the normal state of things. And it has a clever way of coping, the same way you cope in a room that is far too loud. It turns down its own volume. The little receivers that catch the dopamine signal get fewer, and the ones left over get quieter. Scientists call this the receptors turning down, but you can just picture a volume knob getting twisted lower. And here is the catch. When the volume goes down, your everyday baseline goes down right along with it. That baseline is just how you feel when nothing special is happening at all. After enough loud days, that quiet, nothing special feeling starts to feel pretty bad. There is a second piece to this, and it is a little unfair. One of the strangest findings in brain science is that pleasure and pain share the same machinery. The same spot that lights up when you feel good is the spot that handles feeling bad. So picture a seesaw sitting inside inside your head, resting perfectly level when you feel fine. A hit of pleasure tips that seesaw down on one side, and you feel good for a moment. But your brain hates being tipped, so it shoves the seesaw back toward level. And it does not politely stop at level, it tipped slightly past, down into the discomfort side. That little dip after the fun is the come down. The empty feeling the second a video ends. One small dip is nothing, and you barely notice it, but stack hundreds of those spikes on top of each other, all day, every day. Now the seesaw never gets to rest at level anymore. It starts spending most of its time leaning on the pain side. So your normal state becomes a low, restless, nothing feels good kind of mood. And the only thing that lifts it, even for a few seconds, is another spike, which is exactly what keeps you reaching for the phone you were already sick of. Picture our guy lying on the couch, scrolling with a flat bored face, unable to explain why he can't stop. This is also why the spoiled little stickman sulks when you finally hand him a plain book. Picture him slumped in his chair, arms crossed, glaring at a single boring page. The book is fine. The book is good for you, but sitting next to a whole morning of non-stop fireworks, a quiet page feels like nothing at all. Your brain isn't broken, and you are not actually lazy. It is just comparing that book to the steepest high you already gave it earlier today. A real conversation, a slow walk, your own work, none of it can compete with an endless feed. It is like tasting plain water right after a mouthful of pure sugar. So you call yourself unmotivated, when really your bar for normal got dragged way up without you noticing. So let's go back to our guy in the empty white room. Does his one day of doing nothing actually fix any of this? A little, but not in the way he thinks. By the end of the day, he probably does feel calmer and clearer in the head, but that is mostly because he stopped jabbing himself with stimulation for a few hours. It is the relief of finally putting down a heavy bag, not the strength of having trained for weeks. The actual machinery, the volume knob and the baseline, barely moves in a single day. Real shifts in how sensitive your brain is take weeks, not an afternoon of sulking on the floor. Drop him back into the noise tomorrow morning, and he is right back where he started. So one quiet day is a nice rest. It is just not a reset. Think of it less like flipping a switch and more like slowly retuning an instrument. So here is what actually moves things, slowly and for real. The first thing is the least exciting, and it is the whole game. Lower the stimulation, and then give it weeks, not hours. Easing off the worst stuff for 2 to 4 weeks is roughly when real changes start to show up. A deeper reset is more like 2 or 3 months of it. You do not have to move into a cave and give up everything you enjoy. You just have to stop handing the spoiled stickman bigger and bigger explosions every few seconds. Cut the easy, endless, bottomless sources first. The feeds you scroll without even deciding to, and the apps you open out of pure habit. Picture our guy dragging the worst app toward the trash can, finger hovering over it, sweating a little. He doesn't have to delete his whole life, just the one thing that hijacks him the most. Fair warning though, the first few days of cutting back usually feel worse, not better. That low, itchy, restless feeling is the seesaw still leaning the wrong way, and it does pass. A small daily limit beats a dramatic one-day fast that you blow through by lunch. The second thing is to move your body. Regular exercise actually turns your brain's sensitivity back up over time. It is one of the few things that genuinely raises your baseline instead of borrowing against it. A stickman jogging in place looks ridiculous, arms flailing, legs barely bending. But under the hood, that silly little jog is doing real repair work. You do not need a gym or a fancy plan. A brisk walk most days already counts. The third thing is to protect your sleep, and protect it like it matters, because it really does. A lot of this sorting and resetting happens quietly while you are out cold. A tired brain craves cheap stimulation even harder than a rested one does, so one bad night quietly makes the very next day worse, and the phone even harder to put down. Picture our guy lying in bed at midnight, eyes wide open, phone glowing 2 inches from his face. That glowing screen is digging tomorrow's hole before tomorrow has even started. Aim for a steady 7 to 9 hours, and your cravings the next day get noticeably quieter. And the fourth thing is the strange one. Do hard, boring things on purpose. Sit with the slow page. Finish the dull task you keep dodging. Let yourself just be a little bored sometimes, with nothing at all in your hands. Picture our guy carrying a big plain box across a room, slow and steady, with no music and no reward popping up. It feels like nothing is happening, and that empty feeling is actually the whole point. The discomfort you feel sitting there is not a sign you are failing. It is the work actually happening. Boredom is just your baseline drifting back down to a level where ordinary things can reach you again. You are letting the seesaw settle back toward the middle. Do that steadily for a few weeks, and something quietly shifts. The plain book stops feeling like a punishment. The walk starts to feel like something worth doing. The work actually pulls you in instead of shoving you away. The spoiled stickman calms down and finally claps for the small stuff again. Your bar for normal comes back down to earth, and the world stops feeling so gray. You notice you reach for your phone a little less out of plain habit. And when you do something genuinely fun, it actually lands again. So no, you cannot detox a chemical your brain pumps out on its own around the clock. The empty white room and the frozen fuel gauge were never the real story. But you can stop drowning your reward system and let your sense of normal slowly climb back up. It is less of a one-day cleanse and more of a few quiet weeks of turning the volume back down. Be patient with it, because your brain took months to drift up here and it needs a little time to drift back. If a sulking stickman and a frozen fuel gauge taught you something today, leave a like and subscribe so the little guy in your head gets one more small, well-earned explosion.